Hi everyone, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian. I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here on the west coast of Canada. I hope everybody is having an awesome week so far. I hope that you are doing great. You're staying healthy and productive. Welcome Rumi to the class. Welcome students. Today we are looking at an IELTS reading for Band 9 skills, and we will be looking at a passage from one of our exams, reading it, looking at the questions including true, false, not given, and then going through some strategies and giving those high band answers. Again, this lesson is brought to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS success. Visit us there. For the general IELTS, check us out at gieltshelp.com. Our websites look like this. This is our academic IELTS website here. We'll be using this a bit for today's lesson. You can click this big red button to join our premium package. You can get all of our 6 practice exams as well as over 100 hours of HD video lessons with strategies. We are an official British Council IELTS Test Registration Center and certified agents, so you're in great hands with us. And again, once you get access to the premium package, you'll have this My Student account that you can log into. And then in your My Student account, you have lots and lots of goodies, including practice exams, and much, much more. For the general IELTS, it's this green background. Click this big red button to join us there. We still have good news. Yeah, we still have our Cyber Monday discount going on. It's a 40% discount right now. It's the best discount of the year, along with, of course, the Black Friday discount that we just had. For this discount, use the code CYBERDAY when you sign up for the premium package on the websites, and you'll get 40%. It's not expensive anyway, but it's even cheaper this way, so it's a great time to join up. And good news, everyone, we've got a new speaking interview video up on our YouTube channel, so make sure to check that out. Again, that is a new speaking interview video. Lots to learn there. Hi, Carolina. Welcome our moderator to the chat. Hi, Arda. Okay. Hi, Harwinder. Hi, Atharwa. Arda, we'll have, I think you're asking about the speaking class. Yeah, we'll have one of those, I believe, tomorrow or the day after. So we've got some of those coming up as well. All right, everyone. You can download our apps. They're very, very popular. Academic IELTS Help from your app store, or you can also get General IELTS Help if you're studying for the General IELTS from your app store as well. Follow us on Instagram, IELTS_AE-help and GIELTS Help. Lots of vocabulary for your IELTS exam on our Instagram pages. And also our class schedules for these live classes. If you have questions about IELTS, about English, you can send us an email. We love to hear from our viewers and from our students. Please send an email to adrian@aehelp.com and we'll get back to you quite quickly. Okay? All right, so again, lots more classes. Right now it's reading, and then we're going to have, again, a speaking part 1 for everyone. So for today's reading, we are actually using our very, very first exam and our very, very first passage. And this reading passage is Mountains of Ice. Here we go, everyone. So Mountains of Ice. And here we have a picture. And if you're lucky, you get a picture with your reading passage. You can see that on the paper-based and the computer-based IELTS exam at times. Okay, the picture is there to help you with your reading. So it's there for you to understand the passage even a bit more. So when you get a picture like this one, you definitely want to take a second just to look at it and predict or understand the passage. So here we have the title, Mountains of Ice, and here we have this picture. So what do you think, members, that this passage will be about? Okay, so what is this passage about in your opinion based on this picture? Okay, so my first tip here, and I'm going to put this right into the passage. So tip 1, when you see a picture with your passage, the first thing you should do is look at it before you even read the title. Look at it. Ooh, this is what I'm reading about. Okay, so when you see a picture with your passage, take a moment to look at it and then read the title to predict what the passage is about. Okay, Pranjal, welcome to our group of members. It's nice to have you on board. Carolina says it's going to be icebergs and formations because mountains of ice that are in the water like this in the ocean, these are called icebergs. It will be about icebergs. Yeah, and when you think about that, think about it critically, right? So what they are, why they are, right? So why they are would be their formation. It will be about icebergs and their formation, sure. Okay, any other thoughts of what this passage might include? So icebergs, their formation, okay. If you're writing a passage about icebergs, what else would you include in there? Okay, Paulo says it will be about icebergs. Arta says maybe it's something about the Titanic because, yeah, as we know, a very famous example of icebergs and boats not liking each other is the Titanic. Okay, maybe an example of the Titanic. Now, yeah, so Arta, if you're thinking of the Titanic, you might also think about like the impact of icebergs. So how icebergs impact people. All right, so they're dangerous, or they can be dangerous for people, right? So their impact on humans, okay, and boats, namely, right? Okay. Jyoti says maybe something about climate change, right? Icebergs are more frequent as a result of climate change. When the ice caps are melting and big pieces of ice break off, that's also connected to climate change. So something about climate change. Yeah, that's also very, very possible. Let me go up a little bit so you can see this, okay? So yeah, very, very good, okay? So this is what this passage will likely be about. It will be about icebergs, how they're formed, maybe an example of the Titanic, their impact on humans, boats, climate change. Ozma says sea level rising. We don't really say sea level expansion, Ozma. We'll say sea level rising. Atharwa says global warming, environment. Yes. Welcome, Payam. Hi, Muhammad Kareem. Good to see more of you in the class and general English help as well. All right, so good. So we're looking at this image. We're looking at the title. We're predicting now. Let's take a look at the questions. So your second step here is look at the questions, okay? So step 2. Okay. Look at the questions. Okay. Read questions that have information which is in the passage. Okay. So first question here is yes, no, not given. All right, we don't worry about yes, no, not given because we don't know which statements are in the passage and which statements are not in the passage. So let's skip that one, okay? So skip this type of question, all right? Skip this question before the passage. It doesn't really help you to read this type of question because it can really get confusing if you read this before the passage, okay? And then questions 6 to 9 is complete the summary below. Definitely read this type of question, okay? Because all of this information is somewhere in the passage. So this one, read over this information or this question, as this is all paraphrased in the passage. Okay? All right. So Arta says, yes, when they melt, there'll be more floods. Yes, okay. All right, so let's read this, everyone. So read with me here, okay? The sinking of the Titanic. Because there was no international group which monitored icebergs in 1912, it was the sole responsibility of the something to make sure there were no icebergs in the ship's path. The chief reason the iceberg wasn't detected was the something of the sea that night. Because of this, there were no waves crashing against the iceberg, making it difficult to spot. The captain swerved, but the iceberg scraped the side of the ship, ripping the something of the ship. Things should have been fine nevertheless, but the watertight compartments were poorly designed, and once the water in a few compartments, it was able to in all the others. This was a major engineering defect which resulted in the sinking. Okay, so definitely something about the Titanic. So whoever predicted that, good job. Yep, something about the Titanic. Okay, and then now we have this complete the sentences below type of question, and it says choose no more than 2 words. Always pay attention to that. This is again all in the passage, so this type of short answer completion, it's all in the passage, so we want to read this, okay? So to avoid a Titanic-like disaster in the future, something formed the International Ice Patrol, IPP, or IIP, sorry. The IIP's goal is to track the relevant data and something of icebergs. Okay. The Canadian Space Agency bounces something off the water to measure iceberg movement. This data renders large-scale maritime disasters something. All right, and then we've got reading passage 2 coming up, so that's the next passage. Okay, so here we have some more information. So we know that we've got this Titanic disaster. We've got some kind of an organization to monitor iceberg movement, okay? And then we've got the Canadian Space Agency that's tracking icebergs. Okay, so far so good. Now we want to go back and we want to read this passage, okay? While we read this passage, we want to visualize. You want to picture yourself. And when you're picturing yourself, include yourself in the passage. Like maybe you're like a mountain climber that's climbing on top of this iceberg here, and you're thinking about the impact of icebergs, how they're formed, and so on. Okay, for this reading today, we're going to actually use our website. One of the really interesting tools that you have on our website is you have the reading audio available on the website. Okay, so let's just jump back to our academic IELTS website here, and I want to encourage students who are using our websites to use this, okay, function. So here, go to the IELTS audio CDs on the website, and then let's see if that's big enough. I think you can all see that. And then you have tons and tons of, I'll make it even bigger, like that. How about that? Okay. All right, so you have lots and lots of audio materials. Of course, here you have audio materials for the listening section. Okay, so you've got listening section 1, 2, 3, and 4 and such. And then see here at the top of your passages when you're in here, it actually says reading audio CD1 track 5. And you can listen to a native British speaker read this passage from the website, okay? And they're reading at a comfortable speed. It's the same speed that you can use in the IELTS exam. Don't read so fast that you don't understand what you're reading, okay? So read at a speed where you understand what you are reading as much as possible, okay? And these reading audios are excellent for this. So we're going to do this right now. So again, I'm hopping back to the website and I'm going to click on reading passage 1 here, okay? And there's audio for all of the passages in all 6 of the exam. So definitely make sure to do this. Okay, so let's read this together once with this British speaker, okay? And if you can, read aloud so you can hear yourself, okay? So here we go, everyone.
Icebergs. The word iceberg derives from the Dutch word ijsberg, meaning ice mountain. Icebergs are sections of glaciers that are broken off during the warm summer months and float freely in open water. Icebergs are typically found in open water, predominantly around Greenland and Antarctica. The characteristics of icebergs, their historical impact, and the methods we employ today to monitor them are important topics. The reason icebergs exist is because of the difference between the density of ice and the density of salt water. The density of ice is approximately 920 kilograms per cubic meter, while the density of salt water is approximately 1025 kilograms per cubic meter. Because ice is less dense than water, it floats. However, because the difference in densities is so small, only about 10% of the iceberg is visible above the ocean's surface. The rest of the iceberg hides below the water. This is the origin of the familiar expression, tip of the iceberg, used to describe a situation where only part of the problem is noticeable. Icebergs range in height from 1 meter all the way up to over 75 meters above sea level. The height measures the visible portion of the iceberg. The tallest icebergs may have a total height of over 650 meters, including their underwater portion. The largest ever recorded was 168 meters above the water, meaning the entire height of this floater was likely greater than 1,500 meters. For reference, that is twice the height of most skyscrapers. Different sized icebergs had different name classifications. The smallest icebergs are called brash ice. The next category up in size is called growlers, and the ones after that are called bergibits. For whatever reason, after those 3 classes, the people in charge of naming the icebergs got a little less creative. The next classes simply ranged from small to very large. Icebergs can be massive objects. Very large icebergs can weigh more than 200,000 tons. The largest iceberg ever recorded was over 30,000 square kilometers in area. Again, for reference, that is the approximate size of the country of Belgium. The most famous iceberg in history is undoubtedly the one which eventually sunk the English ship Titanic off the coast of Newfoundland in 1912. At that point in time, there was no central group which monitored iceberg activity. Ships relied on lookouts to spot the icebergs. For the Titanic, the unfortunate attitude was that any iceberg big enough to do damage to the ship would be seen in time. This attitude was, of course, catastrophically wrong. The main reason it failed was the remarkable calmness of the water that ill-fated night. The easiest way to spot an iceberg from afar is to see waves crashing up against it. But on the night the Titanic sank, there were no such helpful waves. For all intents and purposes, the iceberg was invisible until it was too late. The captain swerved at the last minute, but as the side of the ship scraped across the iceberg, the hull of the ocean liner tore open. things still may have been fine had it not been for the poorly designed watertight compartments. It turns out that when too many compartments were affected, the water was simply able to spill over to all the other compartments. This was an engineering defect that contributed to the Titanic's sinking. After the disaster of the Titanic, maritime authorities realized that a system needed to be put into place to monitor icebergs so that such a catastrophe would not be repeated. By 1914, the International Ice Patrol, IIP, was formed. Their purpose was to track all of the relevant meteorological and oceanographical data and to chart the movement of all major icebergs. Today, technology is used to track iceberg data. The Canadian Space Agency has multiple radar satellites which send microwaves off the ocean surface and record the reflection to track the movement of the icebergs. Maritime vessels have access to this information in real time, which allows them to know exactly where any local icebergs are at any moment, meaning that a repeat of the Titanic disaster is virtually impossible.
All right, so that is the reading, and
Continental drift and plate tectonics.
before we get into the next one, let's stop the audio there. All right, so that reading passage one, let me see.
Icebergs are at any moment.
Yeah, it's 5 minutes. So just in case you're wondering how long it took that British person to read this passage, it was 5 minutes and 8 seconds, which is actually quite fast. You can even read a bit slower than this. So you can take up to even 8 minutes to read this passage. Hopefully many of you were able to visualize the passage as you were reading. Okay, so you should have visualized how icebergs are formed. You should have visualized how large these icebergs are, their movement, how they impact human life, how humans track them. So all of this you should have been able to visualize. Okay, everyone, we'll see how well you did by going to the questions and then going through them together and practicing a bit of strategy. Okay, everybody was able to hear that audio fine. This is the first time that I'm playing the reading audio in this format. Pranjal, Carolina, Arda, Rashika, were you all able to hear the reading audio clearly, and was it loud enough, or should it be louder next time? Let me know. Arda says it was perfect. Okay. All right, thanks for that feedback. Okay, Paulo says it was great. Good. Fine, that's nice. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at the questions now. So we've read the passage, and now we can look at the questions. So again, here's our first set of questions, okay? The first set is this yes, no, not given, okay? So yes, no, not given, and true, false, not given questions have a very, very clear and simple strategy. Okay, thank you for the feedback, members. That's great. That's very, very helpful. Okay. So, yes, no, not given, and true, false, and not given strategy. Okay. Okay, number one, you have to figure out if the information is given or not given. And to do that, what you need to do is you need to ask a question. Okay? Is this statement important for the content of this passage within 750 words? Or is it off topic or too much detail? Okay, so that's what you have to think about first. Now, if your answer to this question, all right, is it's important, then you know that the statement is given. Okay, it is important. The statement is given, and you need to figure out if it is true or false, okay? If your answer is that it's not important, then you simply mark not given, and you mark NG and move on to the next question. Okay, so let's try this first. Okay, so let's figure out if we have something that is given or that is not given. Okay, and pay really careful attention. This is yes, no, not given. It's not true, false, not given. So you have to actually mark yes, or you have to mark no on your answer sheet, not true and not false. Okay. Okay. So the first one here is icebergs are sections of glaciers that have broken off in the winter months. Okay, so here the question that I want to ask myself is it important to know when icebergs break off from ice fields and fall into the ocean? So for this passage, and I mean, think about it this way, everyone. If you're writing a passage about icebergs and you're trying to explain to people what are icebergs and how do they work, would you include this kind of information? So would you let your reader know what time of the year icebergs are breaking off and starting their journey across the ocean? Arda says, yeah, it's definitely important. Spain Sharma, Mozidian, Sado, what do you think? So Carolina says, I guess yes. Yeah, so definitely it's important. Okay. Yes, this is important. Because it explains the way icebergs come into existence. Okay. So that would be a pretty important piece of information, letting the reader know why icebergs come into existence. So that would be definitely important, okay? Now, if we know that the answer is given, then you have to ask another question, okay? So this is kind of step 2 here. Let me reorganize this. Okay. So if you have decided that the information is important, then you must ask another question to decide whether it is true, which is also a yes, or false, which if it's a no, not given, then it would be a no. Okay, so let's go back to this example here. So now I know that this is given. Okay, so I have to go to my second question here. Okay, and my second question here, and when you're doing this at home, you want to practice with full sentences, okay? So this is a very important tip here. Make sure to practice with full sentences. So is it true that icebergs are sections of glaciers, and this is the question here, I'm just simply copying it, are sections of glaciers that have broken off in the winter months? Is it true that icebergs are sections of glaciers that have broken off in the winter months? What do you think, Rashika? What do you think, Jyoti? What do you think, Akanshka? Is it true? Kyber's saying yep. Jyoti's saying no. And Atharwa is saying no, because icebergs have broken off in the warmer summer months. Yeah, Exactly. So pay really careful attention to the details. Absolutely. Very clever for those of you who caught that. So the answer here is no. Glaciers or icebergs break off in the summer months. When it's warm, that makes sense, right? When it's cold, they stick together, the snow and the ice, right? But when it's warm, that's when they break off. So the answer is no, right? So pay attention to detail. IELTS loves to catch students on not paying attention to detail in the questions. So in both the listening and the reading, pay really careful attention to detail, okay? So pay careful attention to details. All right. Very good. So the answer here is no. No is the correct answer. Okay, next question, and then you just go through it step by step in the same way. So next question, icebergs exist because of the different densities of ice and salt water. Okay. Question, is it important to know the reason that icebergs exist? Answer. So let's go to the next one here, nice and quick. So and use logic, of course, as well. So if you think about it logically, you realize that, yeah, icebergs would break off in the summer months, not in the winter, right? So Rashika says it's important. So if it's important, then we know that it's given. Okay. No, you don't have this type of question in the speaking exam, students. Okay. So it's definitely important, right? Because we're talking about the existence of icebergs, so it's given, okay? So the next question then is it true that icebergs exist because of the difference between the densities of ice and salt water? Harwinder says the answer to that one is yes, and Atharwa says yes, it's 10% of the iceberg is above the water, 90% is below because of that difference in densities, right? So that's why it floats. And so use real life for this, right? You can see that when you have a cold drink and you have ice cubes in your drink, the ice cubes are floating in your drink, right? So you know that this answer is a yes, right? So yes, it's definitely true. Now, for some of you, when you're practicing this at home, you might have a new word like densities, okay? So you want to learn vocabulary as you read. So if you're at home practicing, you should take this word, density, okay? Density in this case is a noun, okay? And if you're studying chemistry, physics, this is an important word for your studies, okay? And density is the tightness of molecules within a material. And then always write an example. Gold is very dense, and air is not dense, or not as dense, okay? So quickly grab that vocabulary and then write an interesting statement, okay? I was not able to break through the ice to free the trapped penguin because it was too dense. Okay, so that's my example sentence with this vocabulary, density or dense, all right? So learn words as you read, as you practice. Of course, don't worry about that in the official exam, but when you're practicing at home, you want to do this regularly, okay? All right, Arta says, I'm just doing a chemistry test right now, laugh out loud. So you might be using the word density, okay? All right, and make that sentence interesting. I was not able to break through the ice to free the trapped penguin because it was too dense. That poor penguin. I love penguins. That's so sad. Okay. All right. Next question. 90% of the iceberg is hidden below the water. Okay. So is it important? Right? Answer, yes. So it's given. Right? Questions that relate to other questions should be fairly easy. And students, you should not be searching. You should not be skimming and scanning for all of the answers. We just talked about density. And density is connected to how much of the ice can be seen by people on a boat, how much of it is underwater. Okay, so it's definitely important. 90% of the iceberg is hidden below the water. It's given for sure. Is it 90%? Next question. So is this true that 90% is hidden below the water? Okay. And your answer might be maybe. Like, you might not remember this number, right? You might be like, well, I don't know. I don't remember this number. Like, maybe. And students have asked me this. Like, students have said, like, what if it's a maybe? Atmal says, I think it was 80%. Okay, so here, if your answer is maybe, then look for a key piece of information in the text. Now, numbers are a good choice. So here, 90%. So 90% is a good choice, okay? Or 10%, right? Which is the remaining, okay? So 10% or 90%. So here you want to do some quick and clever thinking, because if 90% of the iceberg is hidden below the water, then logic dictates that 10% is above the water, right? So I'm looking for these two numbers, 90% or the number 10%, okay? Because there's paraphrasing that's happening in these passages, okay? So I'm going to go back to the passage here nice and quick, and I'm going to skim read and scan for this 90% or 10%. So I'm looking for these numbers. And I remember it was somewhere in the beginning where it was explaining the formation, the existence of icebergs, 920 kilograms, density. So there's that word density for me, okay? And then because ice floats, however, because it is so small, only about 10%. And look at that. So I didn't find 90%, but I found 10%, which is the remainder of that 90%, is visible above the ocean surface. So if only 10% of the iceberg is visible above the ocean surface, then we know that 90% is hidden below, right? So now again, I know that this is correct, and the answer here is it is true. Okay? And I don't write true because this is yes, no, not given, so don't accidentally write true. This is yes. Okay? Jyoti says only 10% of the ice is above the water. That's right, Jyoti. That's right, Harwinder. Okay, here we have the next question. The name classification of icebergs derives from the Dutch language. Is it important to know this? So is it important to know where the ice or the name classifications of icebergs come from? Is that important? So if you're writing a passage about, icebergs, would you talk about where the name classifications of icebergs comes from, like Bergy bits and things like that? Jyoti says it's not important. I agree. This is too much detail. Okay. Too much detail. You wouldn't include this as an author. So here, the answer then is not given. Okay? And then you move on. You don't stop. You don't read the whole passage again because it might not be possible for you to realize quickly and easily. So when you have it not given, you just have to be confident that it's not given, and then you move on. Okay? Some icebergs can be the size of a country. Question: is it important to know how big an iceberg can be? Answer. So, is it important to know? Harwinder says, yeah, it's definitely important, so it's given. Yeah, so it's going to be given. Absolutely. So my next question then is it true? And I remember that it said the biggest iceberg ever recorded was the size of Belgium. And Belgium's actually a big country. There are many countries that are smaller. So definitely icebergs can be the size of a country. So it's a yes. And then I move on. Okay, so I indicate yes. And then I keep going. Okay, all right. So nice and fast, everyone. Okay, now we go on to the sinking of the Titanic. Okay, and this was given to us in the passage in one paragraph, and I remember that. So it's good to remember when you have a summary completion that's all in one passage, or sorry, all in one paragraph. Okay, let's read this paragraph one more time. All right. Parmir is asking you, what are the predictions for the general module of the exam in December? You can't predict it. You can't guess it, okay? All those YouTube channels that are telling you the predictions for your next IELTS exam, that's just silly. It's like playing the lottery. There's no point in doing that. Instead, just invest your time into studying, okay? If somebody predicts some part of it, it's just complete luck. There's no... nobody knows, okay? Cambridge is very careful to not release any information about the exam before the test date, so you can't predict it, okay? So you have to use strategy, you have to rely on strategy like what I'm showing you right now, okay? All right, so this all came from one paragraph, and here's this paragraph again. So the most famous iceberg in history is undoubtedly the one which eventually sunk the English ship Titanic off the coast of Newfoundland in 1912. At that point in time, there was no central group which monitored iceberg activity. Ships relied on lookouts to spot the iceberg. For the Titanic, the unfortunate attitude was that any iceberg big enough to do damage to the ship would be seen in time. This attitude was, of course, catastrophically wrong. The main reason it failed was the remarkable calmness of the water that ill-fated night. The easiest way to spot an iceberg from afar is to see waves crashing up against it. But on the night the Titanic sank, there were no such helpful waves. For all intents and purposes, the iceberg was invisible until it was too late. The captain swerved at the last minute, but as the side of the ship scraped across the iceberg, the hull of the ocean liner tore open. Things still may have been fine had it not been for the poorly designed watertight compartments. It turns out that when too many compartments were affected, the water was simply able to spill over to all the other compartments. This was an engineering defect that contributed to the Titanic's sinking. Okay, so here we have this paragraph again. Okay, let's do this together. So because there was no international group which monitored icebergs in 1912, it was the sole responsibility of the something or someone to make sure there were no icebergs in the ship's path. Okay, I remember reading this. It was up here. Okay. So there was no central group that monitors. Ships relied on lookouts to spot the iceberg. So the word here is lookouts. Okay. All right. Lookouts are the people that are high up on the mast in kind of like a basket. The basket's actually called a crow's nest, like the bird. The crow. And it's the crow's nest, and that's where the lookout is like, oh, what's going on? If you watch some pirate movies, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These days, we don't really have. Well, you know, maybe on some classic kind of old school boats, they still have these lookouts, but you don't see them so much. We rely on radar, right? So they're the lookouts. Okay, it's all one word here, interestingly, lookouts. Okay. The chief reason the iceberg wasn't detected was the something of the sea that night. When there's no waves, and it was up here. I remember reading this very, very clearly. Okay. Where was it? The main reason it failed was the remarkable calmness. Who would think when the ocean's so calm it can be even more dangerous? So calmness, yeah, very nice. And there's some silent letters in there in the pronunciation, students. It's calmness, calmness. Okay, so calmness. We don't pronounce that L, right? It's a silent L. It's calmness. All right. Because of this, there were no waves crashing against the iceberg, making it difficult to spot. The captain swerved, but the iceberg scraped the side of the ship, ripping the something of the ship. It's kind of like the body, the main part of the ship that floats. Okay, if you know the word, great. If you don't, you'll have to check. I know the word, so I'm just going to use it. It's the hull of the ship, the hull. Think about the word hallway, like in your house, you know, the hallway, or in a building, the hallway. It's the hull of the ship. Okay, very good. Jyoti, Atharva, Rashika, nicely done. Hull of the ship. Arda, hull of the ship, very good. Things should have been fine nevertheless, but the watertight compartments were poorly designed, and once the water was in a few compartments, it was able to something into all the others. Now I know this is a verb, and I know the verb here is spill. I don't have to check. You shouldn't have to check for every single answer. I don't have to check for this verb because I know that the verb here is spill. And if you say spill over, okay, if you're using the full phrasal verb, spill over, that's fine. I'm sure you'll get it for that. Okay, so if you use spill or spill over, both are okay, all right? Just make sure it doesn't say one word only, okay? If it says one word only and you write spill over, you're going to get it wrong. So you have to take out the over part, okay? So be very, very careful, students, with the instructions. This is one word only. And if you're writing one word, and then you write two words, then you have to stop and be like, nee. Is it though? Is it two words? I should check the instructions again. Oh no, it's one word only. Okay, and I'm just going to take the verb, spill, into the other compartments. And then you'll get it fine. Okay, students, these last four questions, these fill-in-the-blank ones, 10, 11, 12, 13, I'm going to let you have those ones for homework, okay? So do those ones for homework and then send the answers to my email. Okay, I'm going to show you my email address here. And just send them here to adrian@aehelp.com, and I'll send you back the answer key for those, okay? So send them there. Again, students, this reading passage came from our website. It came from this one here, in fact, which is the academic IELTS website here with all of these goodies at aehelp.com. Okay, and all you have to do to sign up here is to click this big red button. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. And we still have our 40% discount code for Cyber Monday going on. It's right above my head here. It's Cyber Day. Let's go this hand. Now, there it is, Cyber Day. So you can use that when you click that big red button, the Join Now button. All right, students. So that is it for today's reading session, but don't go too far. We have a speaking session coming up where we will practice speaking for speaking part 1, some more practice, and I will be taking students, volunteers to do some voice calls as well. So members are going to pay special attention to members who are in the chat, so make sure that you're there. Everyone, Arda, I know you're waiting for that, so make sure you're in there and I'll look for you. Thank you, Carolina, for moderating this class. I'll be back in 30 minutes, everyone, with speaking. Have a great break, and I will see you all shortly. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out from Victoria for now, but see you soon.